So that brings us to the pelletizing tent, which is where all the action happens, where we actually make pellets. And so the Genie, which is the machine that we're developing, has a hydraulic ram, which is the black long piece that sits in front of the machine. And that's the piece that we put in and out, which determines how much drying we're actually going to be doing from the machine. And right now we have it predominantly out because our moistures are around 14, 15, and 16%. And remember, we have to bring that moisture down to 10% to make a pellet. But the Genie is really not very effective at those very, very low ranges, which is why we're going to the dye system. So we're very, very happy with what the Genie does do, and it's absolutely necessary because in most parts of the country you find moisture levels as high as 50% and 40%, which is typical for a green tree and what normally happens. And so the Genie will actually do 25% of the drying out in the field before we go into our process of dye drying. So, and the dye drying will also be a part of the Genie and part of that proprietary process that we're putting together. And so from the Genie, it comes in, it goes into a twin screw, and the only thing a twin screw does is allow us to regulate how much material goes into the pelletizer at any given time, so that it just doesn't go in at its own rate. We regulate how much material goes into the pelletizer. So from the twin screw, the material goes directly into the pellet machine, and we have been running about 4.5 tons of material through the pellet machine. But because we only have one dye in-house right now, we are using the dye in the pellet machine to do two things for us. We're using it to make a pellet. We're also using it to be part of our drying system. And so as the material goes into the pellet process, and again, all of this information is proprietary and it's taken months and months and months for us to figure out and test, there is a cooler which is also part of our drying process, and a screen. And so the material, which is, let's give an example, 16%, comes through to the pelletizer. The pelletizer takes a certain amount of moisture out, and our tests are showing that probably 50%, that about 50% of the moisture that comes out in the pellet machine, the same amount comes out in the cooler. So if we remove 3% in the pellet machine, we remove another 3% in the cooler. If we remove 5% in the pellet machine, we remove another 5% in the cooler. So as the product moves along and goes to the cooler, it then goes to a screener that we've set in place. And we have a special screen that we've put there that helps an automated process. It helps decide which pellets are actually strong enough or dense enough to make it to the bagging machine. Because if the pellet cannot survive the process between the cooler, the belt conveying systems that we have, and certainly the screener, which is the main place that it gets decided, then that material gets sent back to what's called a recycle bin. And that recycle bin then gets metered back into the pellet machine depending on what we want. If we have a certain amount of moisture in the wood, we can add the recycles and actually get a pellet from even wetter wood. Or we hold back the recycles and just dry them in 6 ton at a time increments, and then put them back through and turn into a pellet. And so therefore, our 5 ton an hour system right now is operating at about 2.5 to 3 tons an hour. First of all, because we haven't brought the pellet machine up to a 5 ton an hour production rate, just because we're moving it up there slowly, which is what we've been advised to do, because your dye really needs to have hundreds of tons of pellets run through it before you can move it to full production. And so we're running at about 4 tons, 4.5 tons an hour through the pellet machine. Over 50% of those pellets are becoming pellets first run through, and the rest of the pellets are being dried second times through. So we're getting about 2.5, sometimes 3 tons an hour coming actually out the door of our mill. The other portion of the mill, once it comes out of here and it successfully comes up into this hopper, the hopper is for our automated bagging machine. Our automated bagging machine arrived last week. It is the latest piece of the process. It came in 3 months late. The gentleman that we hired to build the machine had difficulty with parts, but the machine is finally in. This again is a machine that has been designed and built by Boulder Systems, and is going to be put in place this week. It's in 2 parts, and the machine is going to be put in place right under here. This machine will allow us to cut our employees back, and also allow us to bag at 15 tons an hour versus the 2.5 to 3 tons an hour we can bag right now. So we do have a hand bagging system in place, which is important because secondary customers, for example, like Guardian and other customers, provide bags that are hand bags where they can use them in any pellet mill. And so therefore you have to have a hand bagging process in place to do specialty items. But our automated bagging machine is the way we'll be bagging all New Earth pellet products. And that's going to really, really streamline our process. So we're really looking forward to having that put in place, certainly in the next 10 days. So in closing, I'd like to say thank you for all your inspiration and support. I get lots of emails and calls from you guys, giving us the thumbs up all the time, and I really, really appreciate that. This is an amazingly challenging opportunity that we have, and New Earth Pellets was probably one of the best decisions we could have made. I feel very, very confident that we'll sell every pellet that we make, and we'll make more and more pellets every day. So thank you again. I'll talk to you at the beginning of December so we can get some of the numbers straight, and look forward to seeing you then.